Women around the world have been fighting for equal rights in their communities for many years. They have won the right to vote, occupy the highest office, and stand shoulder to shoulder with their male counterparts in defending their country. The same fight for equal rights has also been waged within the church. Women are now deacons, elders, and even pastors, but there are still many instances where the tight grip of patriarchy remains. Scriptures are still interpreted to exclude women, often with devastating consequences. Amparo Lerin was defrocked by her church. Folata Moyo has made it her life's mission to fight all forms of discrimination against women. Munar Mushavar is on a mission to make the Orthodox Church change their views on the role of women in church. Theirs is a fight to be acknowledged, for their equal rights to be granted, and to create societies where their contributions are equally valued. This is their story. Growing up in the Presbyterian Church of Mexico, Amparo Lerin had a lifelong dream of becoming a pastor. But as a woman, her road to the ministry was never going to be easy.
Está Rubén Montelongo, mi esposo, que antes de ser novios, desde que éramos amigos, él me animó para estudiar al seminario.
Bueno, ha sido muy interesante porque en la vida con Amparo, con mis hijos, desde hace muchos años, ella tuvo el deseo de ser pastora.
En esta fila van a usar esto. ¿Sí?
When she started her journey to become a pastor, there were no female pastors in the Presbyterian Church of Mexico. The church did not allow women to be pastors. For her to become one, she would have to challenge the church's interpretation of scriptures.
Hay hombres que me han puesto el pie en el camino. Me han puesto barreras para llegar hasta acá, pero hay hombres que me han ayudado y creo que son los que vale recordar más.
Una comunidad de hombres y mujeres en la iglesia es la realidad más auténtica de lo que la iglesia es. En nuestro contexto, por ser el tipo de iglesia que hemos sido durante más de 100 años, nunca se ha desconocido el hecho de que la inmensa mayoría de la participación en la iglesia es de mujeres.
Halfway across the world, at the Ecumenical Institute in Bosse, Switzerland, Folata Moyo is a part-time lecturer in gender justice.
Your lunches here are taken care of.
Lunch.
Lunch. So if you want to eat the crew here,
Yes.
and you guys can have lunch here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to let
Folata is passionate about raising awareness and to building a movement for gender justice and equality. She is also the head of the Women's Desk at the World Council of Churches. Like Amparo, Folata has made it her life's mission to fight for equality in both the church and society.
My father had 5 wives. My mother, who was third wife. In my small mind, I had the understanding that if my father was one man, had 5 women, it meant that women were valued as a fraction of a man. And because of that, I just refused to accept being a woman. I grew up that way until at a certain point where some features of your body just pop out and they make it impossible for you to run away from that. So when that started happening, I couldn't go away from being a woman by gender roles. now I had to start reflecting on my resistance to being subjected to a level of, like less than a man. So I guess that's where my activism started from. Wouldn't the church take this up? Why is it that most of the issues that impact women in the church are always thought of as women's issues and not as issues for the church?
As we say, we need to empower women. I think as well as we need to teach the men also the importance of women, and like without us they are nothing. It's like mutual, no, to make a society. And above all, we all are creation, as she was saying. We all are created by God, so we must respect each other. I think that main essence is missing.
Because in our men, we also think woman is the weaker. Yes, but we should tell them, no, we are all creation from God. Yes, whatever men or women, we are fair. So God loves us as He loved the men. So we are all the creation from God. We should know that, yes.
The fight for gender justice in the church is even waged in Jerusalem, the ancestral home of three of the major religions in the world: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Munar Mashavar is a heart surgeon and a Palestinian Orthodox Christian. The conflict between Israel and Palestine is making life difficult for people living in Jerusalem. Racism, inequality, and discrimination are some of the issues Munar faces on a daily basis. In spite of this, like Amparo and Folata, she is also fighting for equal roles for women in church and society.
Imagine that everything that you decide in your life has already been decided by someone, part of it at least. So everything in your life is overshadowed by this fear, by this sort of darkness. So you're not free.
As part of their Sunday routine, Munar and her family visit the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in the old city of Jerusalem. This is, as some Christians believe, the place where Jesus was buried after his crucifixion.
In a just system, in a utopia, everybody's born equal, and everybody has their own basic human rights. So the world is not a just place, unfortunately, and especially in the Palestinian context, it's definitely not just. And it doesn't matter how much of a leadership role you have. There is still something that, that's missing. But once you step into church, that role is completely changed. And I imagine also in a mosque even, it's not just the church, and it's not just the Orthodox Church. It's in any church, for the most part, let's say. You find that women in positions of leadership just turn into worshippers, just the listeners, and that's it. You get preached to, you take the blessings and you go. And that's all.
Traditionally, leadership roles in her church were the exclusive domain of men. While the last few decades have seen a dramatic change, there are institutions that persist with the status quo, often quoting biblical texts to keep excluding women. Munar believes that this has to change.
Yes, we go to church to worship. And yes, we go to practice your faith, but there has to be more to it. It can't be just that.
Hasta aquí es esta, la última varones. Aquí empieza Mike.
When the National Presbyterian Church of Mexico was confronted with the issue of the ordination of women, it was not going to be an easy decision.
Y ha sido una lucha, una fuerza, porque en esa construir de la historia ha habido muchos eventos en los cuales la familia se ha visto involucrada y sobre todo en el lado eclesiástico algunos lo veían como algo imposible de ser. Algunos nos decían, están luchando contra la pared, algo que jamás van a lograr. porque nunca va a haber mujeres ordenadas en México.
The status quo was steeped in years of tradition and a very specific interpretation of scriptures. Both the tradition and the interpretation of scripture had to change if women were going to be allowed on the pulpit. The traditional roles of men and women in the church were so entrenched that it came as a shock even to Amparo's family when she told them that she wanted to be ordained.
Mi mamá, que al principio me desconoció, me desheredó cuando yo me fui al seminario, pero después se reconcilió conmigo y aceptó la voluntad del Señor y estuvo conmigo, con mi papá, en el culto de la ordenación.
La ausencia del amor hiela sus huesos y muchos que lo ven pasan.
In the Presbyterian Church of Mexico, despite resistance, there was a group of men and women who were very outspoken about the right of women to be ordained. They supported Amparo's decision to become a pastor. In spite of having all the right qualifications, the church was not ready to ordain her.
Ella fue licenciada como predicadora en 1997-98 y a partir de ahí empezó una lucha incesante, una lucha muy fuerte en la cual nunca desmayamos, nunca perdimos la fe y sobre todo nuestros hijos estuvieron inmersos en esa lucha hasta que se logró la ordenación.
También creo que es como sembrar un precedente. Muchas mujeres se acercan a mí, me quieren saludar, me escriben, me hablan, me buscan, porque ellas no habían tenido la imagen de una pastora. Entonces ahora para ellas soy como un ejemplo, ¿no? Eso también implica mucha responsabilidad para mí, mucha responsabilidad.
My mom, God rest her soul, was a very strong woman. She was also the youngest in her family. Being raised by such a strong woman made me see that I can do things, you know, and I can achieve whatever I want to achieve and whatever I set out to achieve. Seeing this example and this role model of this strong woman, that she could do anything that she wanted, this raised me to believe that, yes, women can do whatever they want to believe. It's not, yes, medicine is a very tough profession, but it can be done, and it's a beautiful profession and can be done by a woman. It doesn't, you know, it doesn't take away from her femininity or from being able to raise a family or anything like that. So it is very important for the females and the males to see these role models of strong women as well as strong men. I mean, you would want for it to be an equal society, a normal, flourishing society, not half lacking or defective in any way. And especially when we're living under an occupation. You know, you want to create the best society possible to overcome, to have the capacities to overcome this occupation and build a country.
Amparo's fight to be ordained became a widely discussed issue amongst members of the Presbyterian Church in Mexico. The core group of senior male church leaders who supported her soon realized that their views were not necessarily widely shared.
Hay una cuestión que tiene muchas inconsistencias. Dentro de la Iglesia Nacional Presbiteriana hay un seminario y se puede tener el acceso para estudiar teología, las mujeres. Sin embargo, a la hora de presentarse para ser ordenadas no son aceptadas.
Ni en la enseñanza, ni en la predicación, ni en la autoridad o en el ejercicio del poder, las mujeres tienen una presencia real.
Amparo es una prueba, ¿no?, de que ella muchas veces intentó hacer su examen para pues ordenarla y tuvo muchos tropiezos, mucha oposición, sobre todo de los hombres, de los pastores.
La forma en que han encontrado en la Escritura como el empoderamiento de ellos como varones. y han manejado una situación hegemónica dentro de la propia iglesia que no ha permitido que se trascienda, ¿sí? Y entonces ellos optan por esa situación. Y somos mujeres que independientemente que hayamos tenido un ministerio, siempre estamos dispuestas al servicio. Y no porque en un momento dado queramos tener ese reconocimiento, sino simple y sencillamente nos convoca el Señor a ese servicio.
So being female is a biological given. Being feminine is a social construction. Because people will say, oh, you know, you have to look like this. I mean, that's a social construction. Being a feminist is a political action, you know, like where you are working towards gender justice.
Amparo, Fulata and Munar are fighting against the patriarchal system that they believe disregards the rights and experiences of women to fully participate in church and society. Patriarchy is particularly evident in conflict-stricken areas where women and children often suffer the worst human rights violations. In 2002, the conflict between Israel and Palestine resulted in well-documented human rights violations, and it urged the World Council of Churches to create the Ecumenical Accompaniment Program, specifically to accompany, offer a protective service, and to be a witness to the human rights violations. They are often found at checkpoints set up by the Israeli Defense Force or accompanying Palestinian children who have to cross Israeli settlements on their way to school. War-torn regions bring with it unimaginable levels of violence, but it is the women that suffer the most and are most affected. In 2012, the World Council of Churches decided to extend this program to Colombia.
The churches in Colombia have called on the international community to join with them to support social movements and groups that even after this horrible waves of violence have decided to try and organize themselves for fundamental social justice. Here we are in the first phases of a pilot project for international accompaniment in Colombia. And the Finca Alemania and the other communities in the place called San Onofre that we're accompanying are communities that have suffered a great deal of violence due to a program of paramilitary involvement in the counterinsurgency program of the government.
The first group of volunteers are from Mexico. They visit rural communities to gather stories of abuse, in particular sexual violence, and to be a witness to ongoing abuses. A team from Mexico is going into a community wreaked by violence. One of the team members is going to meet Inez, a mother of 3 that suffered at the hands of both the rebels and the paramilitary forces operating in the area.
Yo cuando supe que iba a venir para Colombia, sabía del contexto que se ha vivido en los últimos años en este país, pero todo lo que uno puede imaginar o leer no tiene nada que ver con lo que uno se enfrenta cuando viene a estas comunidades. El trauma que yo veo en la gente es tremendo, las cosas que te llegan a contar, la violencia hacia las mujeres en especial, por ser mujer me pesa mucho. Inés.
Buenas.
Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Bien. Adelante.
¿Cómo estás?
Bien, Dios le bendiga.
Pues Inés, vine a visitarte, ya tenemos aquí un tiempo acompañándolos en la comunidad y dije, hoy voy a venir a ver a Inés para ver cómo va la organización de la comunidad.
Ya nosotros estamos muy agradecidos con ustedes por este acompañamiento, porque nos sentíamos solos, aquí nadie nos visitaba, los niños se volvieron agresivos, había mucha violencia ya entre los jóvenes y los niños, porque nadie nos venía a por lo menos a darnos una orientación. Lo que me pasó a mí pues fue algo grande, o sea, un día yo estaba en mi casa, eran las 6 de la mañana cuando se presentó un señor fuertemente armado diciéndome que si no había ñaca ñaca, había pum, que me iba a matar porque él quería que yo tuviera relaciones sexuales con él.
¿Y tú cómo te sientes de lo que a ti te pasó, de lo que tú viviste?
Aunque a veces siento crisis de miedo, aunque ya tenga mucho tiempo lo que haya pasado, pero son cosas que nos quedan todavía, son secuelas que nos quedan en vuestros corazones, que son difíciles de olvidar.
Me voy. Todo va a estar bien, todo está mejorando, todo va a estar bien y no están solos. Nos vemos.
Violence against women. It's not an issue that community should handle like it's a women's problem and therefore women have to deal with it. It is a community misnomer. It is a scandal of the community, and therefore the whole community, men and women, should take it up and say, no, I mean, we can't be a community which has such a practice within us, because this is a scandal that we don't want to identify with. So for me, that realization, there are so many people doing something about it, and I'm connected to that. It's not only me, it's not only the church, it's the church, it's so many other communities and even other religious groups that are doing something about it. That gives me hope.
Rowan Williams stood down as Archbishop of Canterbury in 2012. He is acknowledged internationally as an outstanding theological writer, scholar, and teacher. During his tenure as Archbishop, he strongly advocated for more women to be ordained in the church.
In areas where women are not expected to speak up in public meetings, you have to say, well, that's part of it. You know, if women are just not allowed to know that their voices can and should be heard, then there are many ways of getting the message to women that their voices should not be heard. And that is part of the problem where violence is concerned.
Women are not just victims. They are actually more than that. They have their own active agency against, that which dehumanizes them.
I think I might begin right at the beginning, with Adam and Eve, and say that the woman, right at the beginning of the biblical story, is not silent. She's in there arguing, taking her part. And at the second great turning point of biblical history, at the beginning of the history of Jesus, there is a woman on whose decision the future of the universe rests, in a sense. She has to speak, she has to say something. So I think right through Scripture there is that sense that the pressure and the presence of God draws out of women a voice, a decision, a dignity.
In Mexico City, Amparo, after a long and tough journey, became a pastor when she was ordained in 1998. The group that supported her ordination won a vote by a narrow margin when the decision was put to the Synod of the Presbyterian Church of Mexico. Amparo was the first female pastor in the Mexican Presbyterian Church.
Mujeres, por ejemplo, recuerdo a mi maestra de escuela dominical que me predicaba sobre la iglesia de Hechos y me ayudó a tener esa visión misionera, a amar la obra, a amar la iglesia, cuando yo tenía 10 años. Después tuve compañeras de camino como mis hermanas que me acompañaron sosteniéndome económicamente también cuando estudié el seminario.
Amparo was the first woman to be ordained as a pastor in the Mexican Presbyterian Church. Her ordination attracted the attention of the United States Presbyterian Church. When the decision to ordain women was put before the Senate in the US, they decided against it. They believed it went against the Word of God. The church in Mexico could not ignore this decision, as the US Presbyterian Church is their major financial contributor. The church in Mexico now had to rethink their decision. It was going to be a stressful time for Amparo as she awaited the church's final decision, but she still had the unwavering support of 7 senior male pastors who wanted to see her ordination stand. Dan Ortega is one of the pastors who supported Amparo's ordination. He has always been a strong advocate of equal roles for women in the church.
La iglesia presbiteriana en México es una de las más grandes. Dicen por ahí que somos 2 millones de presbiterianos en México. Eso es una iglesia grande. Para América Latina puede representar quizá una de las iglesias más grandes, protestantes, de una sola denominación. En los últimos 30 años, en la Iglesia Nacional Presbiteriana de México, se ha vivido un proceso muy interesante en la búsqueda de espacios de equidad para todos los seres humanos. Hablamos particularmente del tema de las mujeres. En los últimos 10 años, esta situación en la Iglesia Nacional Presbiteriana tuvo un giro para muchos de nosotros inesperado, porque aunque sabíamos que nuestra iglesia es una iglesia conservadora, jamás creímos que se tornara de conservador en fundamentalista.
The point is, I think, that if you just open up a system of leadership to women, which as a system remains bad at listening, remains anxious about control, remains exclusive, then actually you're not really unleashing very much. You're requiring women to come into a system that's still short on mutuality and the recognition of dignity. So I think one of the greatest challenges, and it can be quite an exciting challenge, is so how do you shift the culture of leadership in such a way as to recognize that to come to the point of including women has to mean to come to the point of recognizing what's missing in the way leadership is exercised. The listening capacity, the sharing capacity, and then move forward from that.
Don't you also think that part of the problem is that because we live in a world where we have dualistically divided the private from the public, and we have confined women to the private most of the times because of gender stereotype, that most of the times when women talk about certain things, they also think in terms of at least let this be my realm of confidence. And therefore, when a man comes in, they feel like, if men take this up as well, then which one would be my area of confidence?
That is where we must liberate ourselves from that kind of a thing and see that, yes, both of us exist on this planet Earth, and therefore, why should we dualize even our responsibility to say that, okay, this is exclusively for this is for that.
So
and that keeps on creating a problem.
You wouldn't mind cooking for your wife and your children?
I cook, yes. I cook for my wife. Take care of my children. My baby girl is my best friend, even in the house.
You should talk to other men.
Yes. So it starts from the family.
Yeah, it starts at that young
level,
age,
exactly.
The gender socialization.
Yes.
Yeah.
The problem between men and women is the understanding. We have a stigma that it has been practiced in all the culture, especially in Asian culture, when we see women are always discriminated because it's very much not only a cultural thing, but then it's a religious aspect also. Even in Christianity, when we look at Old Testament, in many cases we see that women are not given enough space. So I think it's from the beginning we have this problem, and it's a challenge now. We have to change this.
I think it became very clear to me as Archbishop that one of the priorities that we ought to have as a communion was not only tackling gender-based violence at grassroots, but also making sure that the leadership of the communion overall, all the senior bishops of the communion, were signed up for this, that they would put their weight behind campaigns and statements and policies about this.
In August 2011, the National Presbyterian Church of Mexico voted again on the issue of the ordination of women. 7 male pastors supported ordination, but they were fighting a losing battle. The council eventually voted not only to reverse their previous decision of allowing the ordination of women, but also to deny women access to any other leadership roles in the ministry. Amparo was to be defrocked. After the vote against the ordination of women in the Presbyterian Church of Mexico, Amparo Lirin was defrocked. That means her pastoral privileges and functions were stripped away, and she lost the right to occupy a pulpit and preach to a congregation. The senior male pastors who supported Amparo now launched a court challenge against the decision to have her defrocked. Defrocking is one of the most severe sanctions against an ordained pastor, usually reserved for heresy and gross misconduct.
Hay muchas mujeres más que están en la iglesia Mishadai y esas mujeres me ayudaron mucho. Cuando la asamblea desconoció los ministerios de las mujeres y dijo el proceso de ordenación de Amparo se detiene, no alcanza para decirles lo que siento porque muchas mujeres me acompañaron en esta lucha, muchos hombres.
Amparo's defrocking had a devastating personal effect on many women in the church.
Entonces uno tenía que mantener ese orden para que la sociedad trabajara. Entonces uno pues se mantenía en ese orden, aunque siempre como mujer era un poco estar preguntando a Dios ¿por qué? ¿Por qué nos creaste menos? Siempre había esa pregunta, ¿por qué hay seres menores? ¿Por qué hay seres mayores? Siempre estaba vigente esa pregunta dentro de mí.
Fighting for their equal rights in the church is just one of the many obstacles that women in Jerusalem endure. The simple act of going to church can turn into an ordeal. When the Israeli Defense Force closes down the city, it becomes impossible to get to church.
You know, for us, worshiping is even a struggle because to get to our churches and you sometimes get the checkpoints inside of the old city, so you can't even get to your own church. So in that sense, we've started asking for our rights to get at least to the church. And you see actually that more people are involved in that struggle. And actually, okay, once we've made it to the church, if you're lucky enough to make it to the church, it's all right, all the fun is gone. The fact that there is an occupation means that there is more of the excuse. You need to be more protected because, you know, you might be stopped. And so this gives an excuse for the advocators of patriarchy to say, well, you know, we're under occupation and the honor of our women is very important and we need to make sure that they are safe. And even when you get born, we don't have a Palestinian passport. So our identity is not there. And you have to kind of teach it to the new generations because there's nothing that I, as a Jerusalemite Palestinian, I have not a single document that says that I am Palestinian. But I know that I'm totally Palestinian.
I think in Palestinian society, despite the difficulties, the political difficulties, and despite all the restrictions on a conservative society to a certain extent, I think women have proven really that they can take leadership positions in society and they can be role models and they can advance a number of institutions really in various sectors, which is something really that is a very bright spot in Palestinian society. When it comes to the church as well, I think it's important to highlight the role of the sisters, for example. If you look at the number of hospitals and clinics and old age centers really that are administered by religious orders, Christian religious orders of various, from the various churches, and you think of that really, you don't see that as pure leadership, but it really is.
Fulata is a single mother raising boys. She purposely teaches them the importance of gender equality and of respecting women.
Being a man should not be about dominating, but rather about building relationships of partnership. Doesn't mean that you cannot nurture, you cannot be present in the life of others, you cannot really serve others. So I've been trying to bring those aspects into my sons. And as I said, sometimes I get the feedback that really there are things that they are adapting to which are very positive. Sometimes I get shocked because my sons, when they don't want to be very nurturing, they will say, you know, Mom, if we really grew up exactly as you want us to be, we would not fit out there because men do not behave exactly as you are teaching us. And I have to keep on telling them that you are not called to fit up out there, but rather to be the change that the world needs. It seems like in the public debate and public discourse, most of the time when you define peace, you do not raise the experiences of women in, who experience violence against women as a defining factor of the definition of peace or lack of peace. So those challenges are still there, but I guess together we can make a difference.
The volunteers in Colombia are trying to make a difference in the communities they work.
Bueno, yo viví con mucho tiempo con esa gente. Ellos llegaron ahí a la casa y yo pensaba que eso nada más que era por ese día.
Victims of abuse are often so traumatized that they are scared to be identified.
Las cosas que he visto que me han marcado, que han sido de mucha tristeza para mí, de mucha impotencia en un sentido, es que he visto cómo se vulneran, cómo se violan los derechos de las personas, de cómo las mujeres tienen tan pocas oportunidades. Para mí le pido al Señor es que me siga dando la fuerza y que me siga dando la sensibilidad de seguir ayudando a otros.
Back in Mexico, the male Presbyterian pastors who supported Amparo and her cause now face a challenge of their own. The church was accusing them of contempt, rebellion, and schism. They had a decision to make. Do they leave the church or continue their fight as members of the church? Some decided to just leave. Hugo is now a stay-at-home dad and continues advocating for equal rights for women in the church.
Llegué a tener cargos en los cuales yo tomaba ciertas decisiones. Por ejemplo, tuve la presidencia del presbiterio y pues en las reuniones de la Asamblea General a nivel nacional, pues era expresar la voz de nuestras iglesias, de los ministros que representábamos y que apoyábamos el ministerio de la mujer concretamente. Por un lado, el permanecer unidos como familia, siempre. Por el otro lado, los valores del reino, la iglesia. De repente van a regañadientes a la iglesia, pero les gusta participar en ella, sobre todo cuando participan en obras, y con eso van construyendo pues una serie de valores, la solidaridad, la justicia, la igualdad.
For the other pastors, the sanction would be more severe.
7 pastores de la Iglesia Presbiteriana en México fuimos excomulgados por ser coherentes con lo que creemos, después de que la Iglesia Nacional ha decidido a través de un concilio negar la ordenación de las mujeres.
Soon after she was defrocked, Amparo decided to leave the church. After the excommunication and Amparo's resignation from the Presbyterian Church of Mexico, the 7 pastors and Amparo decided to form a new church, the Mexican Communion of Reformed and Presbyterian Churches.
Yo creo que se abrieron muchas puertas para las mujeres que han sido llamadas por el Espíritu Santo a servir en los ministerios pastorales. Puertas que estaban cerradas y que no se vislumbraban para las mujeres, que muchas mujeres no alcanzaron.
Lydia and her family have endured much pain and hardship after her husband, Philippe, was excommunicated. Ultimately, the excommunicated pastors felt betrayed by the Presbyterian Church.
Pedimos que seas con ellos. Gracias te damos en el nombre de Cristo Jesús, nuestro Señor y Salvador. Amén.
Amén. Yo que soy su esposa, puedo decir que él no tiene nada de las 20 y tantas acusaciones que le pusieron primero cuando lo disciplinaron, luego cuando lo excomulgaron. Todo lo que decían que ese no es Felipe, sino que lo hicieron por mentiras. Y eso no se vale porque ellos son siervos de Dios. Me dolió mucho porque hemos sido presbiterianos toda la vida. Y además porque fueron mentiras lo que lo acusaron.
The Reza family established a church which is now part of the Reformed Presbyterian Church. Here, women have an equal voice. Their daughter Betsa is an ordained pastor in the church.
Se ha acordado de su misericordia y de su verdad para con la casa de Israel.
En casa yo siempre me he sentido igual que los hombres. Nunca me he sentido menos ni siento que tenga que servirle a algún hombre en particular.
Amén.
También se necesita coraje de parte de la mujer, ¿verdad? Para llegar a una igualdad, ¿verdad? Nadie es más, nadie es menos, ¿verdad? Como dice la palabra de Dios, ya no hay judío, ya no hay griego, ya no hay esclavo, ya no hay libre, ya no hay hombre, ya no hay mujer, somos todos uno en Cristo. Entonces, reconocer que todos tenemos las mismas capacidades, que todos podemos desarrollar dones y liderazgos dentro de la iglesia.
No queremos tener resentimiento. La tristeza está todavía. Esta iglesia cumplió poco más de 1 año de esa separación por esa causa. Nos duele, nos afecta, y al menos en mi caso, por lo que tú preguntas tan específicamente, yo todavía sigo con el interés permanente, continuo, de saber qué sigue pasando en esa iglesia. O sea, eso a mí no se me quita jamás. Todo el tiempo estoy pensando qué está pasando allí ahora.
Even if we had complete rights, whatever you could imagine, still being under an occupation would just take away the whole meaning of that freedom. If I'm free, but my family is not free, my children are not free, my friends are not free, my church is not free, then what sense is there of that freedom?
The biggest hope for me working in especially through World Council of Churches and being responsible for women in church and society is the beauty of being connected to so many women who are doing something about it and so many other men who are coming up and doing something about it. So for me, I think the encouraging thing that really gives me hope all the time is to know that there is women are not just victims.
Pues le pido inteligencia, le pido sabiduría, le pido fuerza para ejercer este ministerio. Le pido que Él me ayude, porque para mí a veces es difícil. Vivo lejos, tengo otro trabajo, entonces necesito fuerzas físicas para llevar a cabo el ministerio, para poder visitar a los hermanos, para poder ir a los hospitales, para poder consolar, para preparar bien los sermones, para hacer las liturgias, para todo lo que necesito. Pero también le pido inteligencia, se necesita mucha inteligencia, mucha prudencia, mucha capacidad para hacerlo. Yo creo que Él me ha ayudado, me ha ido transformando poco a poco.
Hemos probado la discriminación como mujeres cuando pertenecíamos a otra iglesia. Hemos acompañado a nuestros pastores que probaron la amargura de la excomunión. Pero la excomunión no existe. Lo que existe es la comunión. Comamos todos juntos y todas juntas del cuerpo del Señor.
In the newly formed church, Amparo found a home that would allow her to fulfill her lifelong dream to become a pastor. A home that was willing to accept her as a pastor. A home that values her contribution, irrespective of her gender.
¿Cuántas gracias te damos, Dios Padre y Madre, porque nos has invitado a tu mesa y hemos podido comer del pan y beber de tu copa?
I think mainly the understanding of the same things. So we speak other languages, and I think we can never understand each other if we don't understand the same terms when we are talking about what is violence or what is peace between the two. So we should try to understand each other before we start conversation.
The problem is because most of the times we don't sit together with men and women to discuss certain issues. Because if we are doing that, things would have been very easy for us, even for men, to understand who we are, and for us to understand who they are.